Hello, everyone. I hope you are well today. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for tuning in. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of speaking to Julie Hunt. Julie has over 20 years experience working in the financial service industry. For the past 17 years, she's been running Face-to-Face Finance, a successful independent financial advice firm based in Norfolk, UK. Julie comes into contact with countless other women in business, women with busy lives and lots of priorities, and she wants to help by equipping them with simple tools that support the need for continued progress towards their financial goals. Julie is now dedicating her efforts to empowering female business owners to secure their own financial futures by educating them through her own podcast and Facebook group, The Money Compass. Julie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on.
You're more than welcome. So let's start by, how do people work out what their financial goals are? We hear this word a lot, but actually it feels like that's kind of this big thing that can be difficult to grasp for some people.
No, definitely. And I think that's one of the biggest areas. People don't really have a plan for the future. And I think we kind of get into a habit where we go to work, or even whether we run our own company or not, and you just kind of, you work, especially when you run your own company, you work and work and work. You never really think about what the end goal is actually going to be. Yeah. And I think it's really, really important to have an end goal, because at the end of the day, what are we actually working towards? If you haven't got even if it's a small goal, I think goals, sometimes people think goals have been like this massive, great big thing in the distance, but yes, goals can be little as well. It could be like, I think as little as having a weekend away. And having going for a glass of wine in the evening on a Friday night when you've just kind of worked all week. I think a lot of us, entrepreneurs, spend all their hours working, and I'm sure on the online world you'll see, oh yeah, I worked all Sunday afternoon and I worked all Saturday, and it's like, the reason we work is to make time to do the things around us, and having goals then is really, really important. So to get people to sit down and actually think about the goals is actually it's quite a kind of moment for people when they do it, to actually get into that kind of mindset of having a plan for the future.
Yeah, I think for me, it's ultimately, what do I want my life to look like? Yeah. What do I want to be doing, not only in my business from a, achievement and success perspective, but actually, what do I want to be doing in my life from an achievement and success perspective? And what does success look like to me at holistically over every part of my life, and not just in this kind of minute area of business, which I think we can really get overly focused on as business owners.
And I think as well, success is different for everybody, for everyone. And I think a lot of the time there's a lot of comparatitis out there, and people are like, oh, so-and-so can afford X, and I wish I could do that. But actually, everyone's different. What their future goals are and what their success story is different. So it could be, for one person, it might be, I need to have £1 million in the bank before I can retire. But for another person, it could well be, all I need is just enough money to be able to have a couple of holidays a year, work 2 days a week, spend time with my family, and do things like that. So it really is, success is so different for every single person. And I think that's what it makes difficult when you're looking at goals. People do a lot of comparing and go, oh, well, I can't be a success yet because I haven't reached that figure, but so-and-so has, so I'm not as good as them. And, and that's really important to not do that, and to make sure that your goal is for the future is all about you and your family, not about other people around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in saying that too, there are some people who are very motivated by money goals. They are those people that absolutely will strive towards that £1 million business or whatever it might be. But there are other people who actually, the money goals don't motivate them at all. What motivates them is perhaps being able to take the whole summer off when their kids are off school, or being able to attend the dancing shows and the school plays.
Yeah, and I think that's really important as well. And there's no right or wrong there. I think that's also really important to remember, is it doesn't matter what your goals are, they're your goals. And, and there isn't a right or wrong answer. And and that's really, really important sort of part of it. But yeah, we do find that people, when they sit down and do their goals, most people don't have a goal in place. They just, just plod along. For me, I didn't really have a goal in place until a couple of years ago. And I was very much, my company's been going for quite a few years. I just worked and worked because I knew one day it would be an end result. And I like my holidays. So I used to go, I wanted to have my holidays. And my mum, unfortunately, was diagnosed with terminal cancer during COVID. And she went from diagnosis to death in 10 weeks, which
Oh,
was
I'm sorry.
really, really sudden.
Mm.
And I was really frustrated with her because, well, not with her, obviously, but in that respect, yeah, how dare she die? But no, but it's, I was really frustrated because a year earlier, I'd sat down with her and done some cash flow modeling with her and said, Mum, you can retire now. Because they didn't have a lot of money, but she didn't really have a lot of outgoings either. So her success was, just having a few holidays a year, pottering about, being with her partner. And her goal was to basically, at 65, to retire and then go to Gretna Green and marry what is now my stepdad, because they did marry before she died. And that was her goal. But at 63, I sat down with her and said, "Oh, Mum, you could retire now. You just might be hardly short until you're till 65." And she was like, "No, I must work till 65." And she died at 64. So she never got to do that. And that was really frustrating for me, because I'm like, why do we have this number in our head that's come down from generation to generation that we have to work until this X age? And that's got to be our life, because she could have retired 2 years early. She could have had a year, done the Gretna Green thing, had a nice kind of year retired before, she unfortunately was no longer with us. And it made me sit down and go, right, okay, what do I want for the future? And obviously I have the 64 number in my head, which is obviously going to be there. And I'm aware that's there and the reason for that. But I'm like, right, okay, what do I want to do? And it's kind of a fine line between how long I will work for and what I want my life to look like now. And so I did quite a lot of work on what that would look like, what my finances were at, and what I could afford to do, and what I needed to do to be able to achieve it, but still enjoy life at the same time. So I'm really focused on what my future goals are because of that experience that I had.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, thank you for sharing that story about your mum, because I think that will probably be quite eye-opening for a lot of people. And understanding sort of where they are now, and therefore what that actually means. Like you said, that exercise that you did with your mum that said, actually, you don't have to work till that age because of the activities, the things that you've put in place up until this point.
Yeah. No.
And I guess for a lot of people, and I think for a lot of business owners in particular, I think that we often just assume that our business will be the thing that sees us into retirement and will be fine. And many business owners that I've certainly encountered don't think about their pension, investments, what they might need to be considering setting up now so that their future self can benefit.
Yeah. And a lot of people think that their business is going to be like they're either going to be able to sell it, or they'll just keep working it. I mean, I know people who've been like, I'm just going to work until I'm 80. And I'm like, well, how does that really look in reality? I mean, are you going to be working 40-hour weeks until you're 80? Because to me, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun. I don't know about you, but
sounds quite tiring when you're 80 to be working 40-hour weeks, certainly.
This is it. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I've got a plan to retire at 50. But when I say retire, I do that I want to be able to travel. I want the company to be able to run without me being in it. But if we're having a horse racing day for clients, then I'm going to be there. Don't you worry. So I will. They're not going to get rid of me completely. They might like to think that I'm going to be going in a few years' time, but actually, it's going to be my choice. And I think that's such a thing about retirement. And I don't like the word retirement. Retirement kind of makes it sound like. I also remember my granddad retiring, and he was 65 when he retired, and he was a construction worker. And he basically went from being up a ladder building a wall one day to getting out the stick and a flat cap and basically
and sitting on the sofa.
Yeah, and walking up the garden with his walking stick. And it's like he became an old man overnight. And I think retirement for a lot of people, that gives that impression that, oh, if I retire, I'm then old. Whereas I think it's not, it's just a lifestyle change. And there needs to be a new word for retirement. And I haven't come up with it yet, but it certainly needs to be one that, it's coming away from, so retiring doesn't have to be coming away from doing things that you love, because a lot of us love the businesses that we do and we're very passionate about them. But it's a case of being able to put in the time in when you want to, but be able to then take a time out to have time with family, time with holidays, and doing things like that. But you're right, having investments and pensions in place as well is really, really important, because we don't know what our business is going to be worth when we sell it.
Yeah.
And just thinking blindly it will cover it all doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the case. And it's probably worth doing research with someone who does do buying a business, and who knows that anyone's going to want to buy your business when it comes.
Yeah.
And if you've got a business when it's your name and you are your business, what exactly are you selling? Because people buy you, not your company. So does that have a tangible value?
Yeah, absolutely. And let's think about the people who had that plan to sell their business and retire and live off the money, but that happened when COVID hit, and
absolutely,
their business potentially was worth nothing at that point.
You suddenly realize what was an essential business and what wasn't an essential business, and a lot of things were not considered essential. Now, companies that pivoted in that time have done really, really well, but there was a lot of businesses and a lot of small business owners who found that they weren't entitled to grants, weren't entitled to funding, and their business was no longer an important one. And certainly at the moment, with inflation rising and the threat of recession, things that I would call I wouldn't want to call the word frivolous, but what I would call lifestyle expenses, people are going to be starting to cut down on those. Do they need these items anymore? Certainly well-being is still going to be important. I think it's certainly very important with lots of people working from home, but what is your product? Is it a lifestyle, a purchase for somebody, or is it an essential purchase? And that's going to be really important as well, I think, in the next few months, definitely.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And I actually think it'll be more than the next few months. I think that will impact businesses probably for the next year or two, in reality. So, if the plan is to sell the business and make your millions over that time so you can retire, then perhaps that's not the best future proof of your life in general. So what should we be thinking about when we are kind of in the here and now, and our retirement, for want of a better word, is, at some point in the future? It might be 10 years, it might be 15 years, it might be 30 years. But I'm guessing that we need to start preparing today for that point in time. So how do we go about doing that?
I think the most important thing is to, again, the sooner you can start preparing, the better, because the three things that make money is money, time, and risk. So, and if you've got time, it really helps with the growing of the money. And I think it's starting putting some plans together. So, if you're earning good money on your business, it's kind of making sure you're putting money away into your pension. And because one, it's tax deductible, you've got your corporation tax savings on that. So rather than paying the taxman and corporation tax, the money could be going towards your investment for your future. So that's really, really important. And basically keeping an eye on it, see what's happening. And also, if you've worked for other employers in the past, do you have pensions from those previous employers? What are they doing? Have you moved house? Have you got married? Have you changed them? Do you even know where they are? I think it's like 9.6 billion pounds in pension pots unclaimed in the UK. And that's a huge amount of money. And that will be people who have worked for someone, maybe in a couple of years, there's a pension sitting there. They've kind of forgot about it. They've moved out. They've moved again. They haven't updated the address. No one knows where they are. They're gone as a gone away. And that money is then basically will go to the treasury eventually. Whereas actually it's their money. And there's a lot of money out there that people haven't claimed. And that's kind of really important. And I think if you can start saving now, and I think one mistake that everyone makes is they think that investing is only for people who've got lots of money. Whereas you can start now on like £50 a month. Straight away. There's lots of online options, or if you go and see, if you've got other pensions as well, go and speak to a financial advisor. But certainly there's enough options out there online as well that you can go to and start putting money away into an investment, into a pension, or like an ISA or a different savings tool. And I know the banks and building societies have got no interest rates, but the investment's there. And actually at the minute, with the market being so volatile, it's probably a good time to be paying on a monthly basis, because you'll benefit when the market drops, because it will probably at a lower price. And today is always the best day to start. So
I was going to ask that actually, because one of my team spoke to a client the other day, and she mentioned that she had no pension provision at all set up, and she was 64.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought, ouch, that doesn't sound like a good thing. But I guess the question to you is that too late? It feels like it's very late, but is it too late?
I mean, it is leaving it a little bit late, but I mean, it depends how long you're going to work for. So, I mean, you can still get, if she's going to be working for another 5 6 years, then certainly definitely start paying that money in. So, but the sooner you can start, the better it is, to be honest, because it means the more time you've got. So I have like some junior staff in the office. So like I've got a 17-year-old apprentice. When he's been with us 3 months, we'll give him the option to join the pension scheme. And we'll encourage him to do that, because that to us is really important, because the longer you can save, him putting in, I mean, obviously he's an apprentice, so he's not on a huge amount of money at the moment, bless him. But that money that is going in now, even if it's only like £50 a month, that's going to be going in. Plus I'm going to match it. So it'll be a case of, it might not seem like he's putting a lot in, but then it's doubling automatically. He's getting the tax relief as well at 20%. So actually what he's putting in is actually a lot more, because it's being doubled and then added 20% onto it as well. So, and it also then means it's in the market for so much longer. So when he gets to retire at, say, 57, possibly later than that, it will have had like 40 years to basically to grow, and it will have gone up.
Yeah, with that in mind, then, for those people that can afford it, should we be thinking about doing something around pensions for our children? And at what point can we do that? Can you contribute to a pension from when they're born, or do they have to be a certain age, or how does that work?
You can start paying into a pension for a child, basically from when they're born. You're limited to 3,600 gross.
Okay.
But again, it's still amount, and there has been figures done growing on averages. I think we did a blog about it a couple of years ago. Potentially, your child could be a millionaire just by paying into a pension from 0 to 18.
Wow.
So yeah, and then obviously when they get to retirement, that could be worth £1 million, which is quite a nice thought, to think you're going to make your child a millionaire without doing it. So yeah, so definitely if there's spare money about, putting it into a pension for a child is definitely a good way of doing it. And it's then getting it in the market and it's investing straight away. So
yeah, we certainly have ISAs and things set up for our children, but I never actually thought about a pension for them until you were kind of speaking about the 17-year-old, which kind of triggered that for me. So I think that's incredibly interesting. So like you mentioned, it's the best day to start is today. Even if you might be 64, the best day to start is still today. Should we, with the money we have, it is option one for pretty much everyone? I know that this, by the way, I'm going to caveat and say this does not constitute financial advice. Always seek, advice from an appropriate qualified person. But is the sort of step one pension, step two other investments, is that kind of typically what people should go for?
It really depends. I know that's a real kind of like a blank office. It depends what they're. So when we do like an appointment with a client, we'd sit down and ask them what their goals are and what they're looking to achieve. So if somebody was looking for something where they could have access to it, so say for example they're looking to save money for a house, although probably an investment wouldn't be that, or like a university fees for a child, you probably wouldn't want to put it into a pension because it is tied up. Although you get your tax relief on the pension, be it either as corporation tax or tax relief going in if you're not self-employed, money's still tied up until at least 57, depending on what the current government rules are, because obviously they could change again. However, say you need that money before that for a reason, then something like an ISA or what we have as investment accounts, which are basically ISAs without the ISA tax wrapper. So there is tax potentially to pay on that depending on what you're doing with it. So they would probably be a better option because they're instant access. With an ISA, obviously you've got the tax benefits, it's tax-free savings. So it could be that's a better option than a pension. So it really depends what you're saving for. So when we're looking at goals, like we said earlier on, it could be a short-term goal or it could be a long-term goal. So short-term, like investment goal, we would say at least a minimum of 5 years if you're going to invest the money. If you need the money before that, then don't put it into an investment, put it into like a savings. Like you can't go far wrong with premium bonds, to be honest. Okay, you don't get any interest on them, but you never know, Ernie may pay.
You win sometimes, and that's quite exciting.
It is getting that little notification up on your phone or the little envelope in the post. I mean, that's all very exciting, and definitely when those checks come through. So for short-term saving, I would always say premium bonds, cash ISAs, those kind of things. I know the rates aren't very high at the moment. They might start going up a little bit. Interest rates have risen a couple of times in the last sort of month or so. Again, lots of uncertainty in the market at the moment. What's going to be happening with rates and inflation and lots of things happening around that. But yeah, if you're investing for 5+ years, again, if you need it if you need it out before you're going to retire, in your late 50s, then like an ISA or something like that would still be the same thing. When you do these things as well, if you do them online as well, or if you see a financial advisor, they'll go through things like risk with you and your capacity for loss. If you do them online, most online systems have a questionnaire that they do to make sure that you're happy with the amount of risk you're taking, because investing, there is risk involved, and especially the market being as volatile it is at the moment, it's something where if you're very, very nervous, then it's probably not the place to be. But if you want to make money for the future, for your retirement, then investing is going to be the solution. It's just a case of making sure you don't take too much risk. And that's really important to look at that. So most advisors will be able to talk through that, and also the online systems do questionnaires around that, and they'll aim you towards like investments and funds which will match that risk, so you don't take more than what you need to. But again, if you've got a long time to go, like I was talking about my 17-year-old, he's not going to need that money till he's 40, so he can take more risk of that money because it's going to be not needed for such a long period of time. And again, that plays a account. So say you want the money out in 5 years and you're really low risk, then you really want to take very low risk. But say you want the money out in 30 years and you're quite low risk, you can take a little bit more risk because you don't need that money until much later on.
Absolutely. Yeah, it completely does. And like we said, how everyone's version of success is different to each other. Everyone's appetite for risk is different to each other as well. So there'll be the riskiness involved in the sort of time frames, but then there'll also be everyone's own personal appetite for risk and what they're kind of willing to go down or not go down as well. And
that is really important to get that right as well. So but
amazing. So when it comes to, I'm specifically thinking about the longer term financial goals. So the kind of retirement-y type goals. How much as a business owner should we be aiming to put towards pensions, retirements? I heard some numbers bandied around and I don't know the truth in them. Somebody once said to me, if you take your age at the time that you start putting into a pension divided by 2, and that percentage of your take home should be what you put into a pension, which is a nice easy number to calculate, but is that just a throwaway calculation that doesn't mean that much to everyone?
What we do is what we call cash flow modeling. So what we try and do is we find out from a client, if you had to retire today, how much money would you like to live on? And we try, and that's quite a difficult number to work out, because it's almost like, okay, well, if I retired today, I wouldn't have a mortgage because that had already been paid off, for example. I'd have this much living expenses. I'd be using the car less because I don't need one car in the family. So we try and get them a rough number. So, and it varies from different people. So it could be anything from like sort of £1,500 up to £5,000. So people do that. And then what we can do from that is we'll look at what current investments they've already got in place. And we'll be able to say, right, okay, you've already got these in place. We'll work on the principle they're going to grow by X %. There'll be inflation of this. So we can kind of calculate that all in as well. And then we can be going like, basically, we'll then run it into the software, and it'll be like, right, you need to die at 67. Okay, so that's great.
So let's not aim for dying at 67. Let's work out a different strategy.
So then it's like, okay, so let's say you want to put some monthly payments into your pension. What would that be? So it could be like, okay, if you're putting £100 a month into your pension, that's okay, we can get you to 77 now. And it would be looking at like that. I mean, the more you can put into your pension, there's lots of benefits to pensions for longer term investments. We've also got the fact, if there's any money left in your pension, back in the olden days, if you died, your pension died with you. Whereas now with pension drawdown, And that was if you bought an annuity. And I think only 3% of the population buy annuities anymore.
Okay,
And
yeah.
like 97% of us go into drawdown, which means that money is still there and that goes to your family afterwards. And actually, that actually falls outside your estate for inheritance tax planning as well. So if you've got other money as well, pensions are quite good from that, because there's no IHT connected. Your family can inherit your pension, and there's other benefits as well for that.
Interesting. Really, that's incredibly interesting, actually, because if you do have a large amount of money towards the end of your working life, and your estate is quite large, then it makes sense to put as much into your pension as you possibly can, because that protects it from inheritance tax.
It does. And then when you actually then start to retire, you want to be spending like your other money rather than your pension. Yeah, it's a kind of a nice fine. You need to kind of balance it so you're paying, as a nice way, as little tax as possible, because obviously you get taxed on your pension income, but not on your ISA income. So having a combination of the two to save into is quite a nice way of doing it. And when you get to, and then if you do then, unfortunately die, that pension is then outside your estate for inheritance tax, whereas the ISA would fall inside your estate. So there is some benefits for it to give to your children. I had a conversation with a businesswoman, and she didn't have a pension. And she's kind of in her like early 40s, late 30s. And she said, I thought that having a pension would mean that I failed. Oh, and I was like, oh, okay. And I kind of was like, oh, where did that, what makes you think that? She said, if I have to rely on a pension when I retire, then I failed. And I'm like, but the pension is really good for corporation tax now. And when you get to retirement, you can still live off. And if your business is still producing an income and you're getting an income from that, you're not
forced to take it.
You can do that and leave the pension there. And the pension is then outside your estate for your children. So you're actually leaving something that's really good to your children and saving a tax bill when you're younger. So it has got its real benefits as well. I mean, the only real drawback to the pension is that you can't get at it until retirement. Yes. But if you're a person who spends money when it's sitting there, then actually that's not a bad thing to have in place, because you are tied to the fact that you can't get hold of it. So it is destined for your retirement or for your future life. And that's quite important. I mean, when you get taxed on the income after the first 25% as well of the pension, but which is, but you get your tax relief on your way in. So everything has pros and cons. I mean, every product has pros and cons, but certainly a pension used correctly can be really, really good. But back to your actual questions. Like I kind of went off a bit of a tangent.
No, that was okay, because it was a fascinating tangent, actually, and I'm sure a lot of people will have been. I was fascinated by that, because I didn't realize that whole getting it out when you die thing, and I think actually we'll probably have some listeners who are similar to that lady that you said, where their mindset was a little bit off on that.
Yeah, definitely. But so what we calculate is when we then work out how much money they need to pay monthly to get to their goals that they want to achieve. And that could be their goal that actually they don't really need £5,000 a month to live on, which could be we want to bring it down a little bit. Or they're like, actually, you know what, let's put more money in our pension or our investment or our ISAs. Because again, retirement money hasn't got to just come from your pension. Yes. It is a combination. So, so like for myself, my husband and I, we have a mixture of the ISAs and pensions. Yeah. And when we retire, our income will be doing some really fangled calculation. And we work it out. And that's why you see a financial advisor. Definitely is time to see a financial advisor when you get into that point, because they'll be able to help with the tax, the best time to take the money out from a tax point of view. And that's certainly something that an advisor would be able to do over an online platform. So that's definitely where they come into their forte from that aspect as well. But it's kind of like you can then look to see the best way to take your income to make sure it's tax efficient and you're getting as much money as possible for what you actually want in your retirement. But it's putting that planning in now. So it's never too young to start.
Amazing. I love that. I think that's really good. And I think that's going to be so helpful for a lot of our listeners. I've got my cogs turning now. I'm like, oh wait, hang on a minute. So it's definitely given me some food for thought as well. This is amazing. Julie, thank you so much for chatting with us today. I think, as I say, it's got my cogs turning. I'm sure it will have some of our listeners and viewers thinking as well. So how can people connect with you? Where do you hang out online?
Okay, so I've got a Facebook group called the Money Compass, which is navigating your way to financial success. It's a free group, so everyone's welcome to join. I'm also on Facebook, and also Face to Face Finance has got its own Facebook page, and also our website, which is www.ftof-finance.co.uk, which again has all our social media links and also email to contact us as well.
Wonderful. So what we'll do is we'll put all this in the show notes for those of you listening on the podcast. I'm going to go away and join the Money Compass Facebook group as well. So I hope to see some of you in there. Once again, Julie, thank you so much for joining us today. I think what you've shared is going to be massively useful to our listeners and watchers. So I appreciate it very much.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
And thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you again, same time, same place tomorrow. Take care, everyone.